Your partner is clandestinely plotting an affair. Today we unfold a tale with this theme. Enjoy the watch, but avoid such conduct. When he heard his wife's friend, Becky or Beck, as she often goes by, he had just come back from playing golf on a Saturday earlier than expected. Glancing through the open sliding patio door, he saw his wife and her 3 friends unwinding by the pool, savoring mimosas. Diana, his wife, was lying on a sun lounger, her back facing the door. Beck was to her right, with the redhead Steph directly across from Diana, and Cheryl on her left, sprawled on a towel by the water's edge. He stayed hidden to listen in. "Sorry, Beck, it's just consuming my thoughts." "I've experienced it and can't shake the feeling," his wife divulged. "You all talk about it, yet I'll keep it quiet so Jackson doesn't find out. I don't want to end up like Candace." Candace, a friend of theirs, had regaled them with stories of seduction and unforgettable nights. He's bound to find out, remember my situation, and how Candace's advice turned out harmful. "It's been 3 years since my separation, and I regret every decision that Candace influenced," Beck replied, looking somber. His wife maintained it would be a one-time thing to verify if size is as important as Candace claims. Cheryl chimed in, "That's a misconception. In college I dated a guy, but after the romance he was just another seeking only intimacy. Meeting Bert, I discovered his affection was the deepest, offered with the greatest respect. The value of a man isn't in his pride alone, which without it makes him dull." She took a sip of her drink. "It's purely a physical challenge, lacking any emotional depth," she stated. Steph, who is single, observed, "I warned you at our bachelorette party not to become too involved with anyone you meet. You may have pure intentions, but theirs might not be. The problem now is your ongoing secretive liaison. Whether you admit it or not, we're just having casual fun. It's not a relationship," Diana countered, alluding to a recent admittance of integrity from her new acquaintance, piquing her interest. Beck, moving closer to Diana, shared her feelings about Candace's solitude, contrasting it with Jackson's commendable traits, subtly expressing her own interest in him should Diana's actions lead to her own ruin. Diana, faced with Beck's grounded perspective, still believed a single encounter was necessary. Eavesdropping, Jackson was consumed by anger, appalled at his wife's intentions after years together, rashly confronting her beside the pool. The anger in his gaze was unmistakable to all present. His right hand clutched her wedding and engagement rings, quickly slipping them off her left hand. "My rings," she cried out. "You're no longer my wife, so go ahead and have your fun," he stated bitterly. With a vigorous toss, he flung the rings over the house roof, where they landed on the street in front. "Go have your fun with this man," he said, his voice filled with self-respect yet shaking with rage. "I've heard it all. I knew you weren't big on bachelorette parties, but to think you got involved with some random from a bar." Diana crumpled to the ground in tears. Steph was quick to stand, trying to pacify Jackson. "Take it easy, Jackson. She doesn't deserve this reaction." "Absurd," he snapped back. "You all anticipated this the moment you started inviting her out, especially you, Steph," he accused, pointing at her. "Since you're involved, help her pack her things and get them out of my house now." Cheryl, with a grin she often used to sway her husband, said, "You can't be serious." She reached to touch his chest, only to stagger backward into the pool as Jackson pushed her away. Turning around, Jackson declared, "I'll be gone for an hour, and I expect her to have left my house by then. Seems like Steph has a new roommate." Walking back through the door, Jackson added, "Since I've overheard you two, I look forward to our future meetings. But remember, there will be no spending the night until the divorce is finalized. Will you manage without their friendship?" Beck stood resolute. "It's no problem," she articulated, her lips curving into a subtle grin, recognizing a true opportunity. She felt hopeful, drawing lessons from past mistakes. A week on, her optimism paid off during the hen party on Friday. Beck saw to warmly greet her boyfriend, a man she identified as the kind who lurked in clubs preying on married women. Knowing his history as the former roommate of a man who had once enchanted her, she had always regretted that liaison. That night, she realized Dee's life was about to change in the same way hers had, filled with regret for not stepping in sooner. Despite their long acquaintance since their days in school and understanding Dee's assertive nature, she wished she had documented these instances earlier. At recent gatherings, she had taken photographs to shield Dee from echoing her historical errors, aiming to show to the persona she portrayed publicly a married woman deceiving her partner. It appeared as though she had captured these moments to take Dee's husband for herself. Maybe that was indeed the intention, she speculated. That evening, Dee refrained from dancing with her partner, opting instead to say goodbye to her friends, meet the man, and they left the venue together. In a small, cluttered flat, Dee felt a surge of anticipation. This was the first man she had met in 21 years other than Jackson. "Disrobe me," he directed, moving towards his zipper. Seeing her without her ring, he commanded, "Wear the rings." "I want them visible as you caress me," Dee answered. "I can't. Jackson took them away when he kicked me out last weekend. What led him to do that?" "Were you with someone?" he probed. On the defensive, she retorted. "No." He overheard a conversation I had with friends about my anticipation for our intimacy, so he removed my rings and expelled me. She saw his interest. Diminish, wondering if Beck had been right. His fascination was solely with the excitement of engaging with a married woman. "Aren't you attracted to me?" he asked, recognizing her attractiveness, but also acknowledging that without her married status, she lacked the appeal of someone looking for an affair. If she falls for me this easily, then who wouldn't? He thought of her as damaged goods. "Here's what we'll do tonight. I'll fulfill your wish. You crave him, I know, but after tonight you must leave. I'm not interested in you staying here trying to be my girlfriend, neither am I your partner. My interest lies in married women, as I don't seek emotional ties," he said with a smirk. He then removed his pants, throwing them onto the sofa, followed by his shirt, which he laid over his trousers. He didn't have Jackson's physique, but she didn't mind. Her intentions were clear. She knelt before him, and after while he pushed her towards his bed, she began to undress as quickly as possible. Now naked before him, he pushed her onto the untidy bed. "I'm sure you liked it," he remarked with a grin, then withdrew to the restroom, closing the door. Left alone, she felt a mix of sadness and disappointment. It was a significant event, yet it echoed her first-time disappointment. Sums it up aptly. As she drove back to Steph's, she realized it had been merely an hour since they had left the bar. Had she been with Jackson, she'd now be basking in the warmth of their post-lovemaking embrace. Contemplating a return to the bar to reconnect with her friends, she felt desolate and burst into tears, calling an Uber to Steph's empty apartment. Jackson had spent the week preparing for his new life. Some might call him cold, but compartmentalizing was his way of solving problems. Running a successful business, he could delegate tasks and focus on what mattered most. He knew Dee would receive official notification at her workplace by Monday. His approach to their separation wasn't vindictive. They had spent more than 20 years together, where she had been a loyal wife and mother. Yet she had given in to the temptations of her sleepover parties, a weekly occurrence. Since the installation of the pool, the gatherings around it every weekend, sobering up, bothered him slightly, but occasionally he was tired of their constant weekend presence. While Diana sought new adventures, Jackson drove 2 hours to have dinner with their son at college, intending to discuss the divorce man-to-man, as his father had done. He was of the opinion that his father's interventions prevented potential problems by enabling his mother to pursue her happiness, though he was aware his mother disagreed. The next day, after lunch on Saturday, Jackson and his son came back home, hopeful the visit wouldn't adversely affect the son's school performance for that term. Following dinner, Steph asked about Diana's evening out. With her love interest questioning if it met her expectations, Diana expressed her letdown, a stark contrast to Candace's enthusiastic narratives and Steph's descriptions of her lively single existence. She had expected the evening to surpass all previous experiences, yet it left her feeling disillusioned. Steph asserted that the secret lay in choosing the appropriate partner, suggesting she had ideal candidates in mind. Steph was dating 2 men concurrently, with each aware of the other, confident in her ability to persuade them to partake in festivities that night. The pairs enjoyed a meal and danced. then returned to Steph's apartment. It was evident Steph chose one of the men, but her alternative choice was eager to spend time with Diana. They got comfortable on the sofa, he proved to be a skilled kisser, and she responded to his gestures. Diana expressed her disapproval, yet he ignored it. She quickly became disenchanted, pondering if this was what her future entailed: transient pleasures with men more concerned with their own satisfaction than hers. She extracted herself from under him, made her way to the bathroom, and began to shower. I just needed to wash off, she reflected, feeling soiled after being physically close with two different men on successive nights, both times ending in dissatisfaction. The hot water provided solace, and as she lathered up, a cool breeze announced another's presence in the shower. He hugged her from behind, murmuring, "Hey love, I cherish our closeness in the shower. Do you like it too?" His larger frame made it impossible for her to push him away. In search of something to use in defense, her hands found a soap dish on the window ledge. Gripping it in her left hand, she hit him on the head, shattering the dish into numerous pieces. Stunned, he fell to the shower floor. Diana climbed over him, sat on the toilet, and called out for Steph. As Diana sat atop the toilet waiting for help, Jackson was sound asleep on the couch, where he had been since they parted ways. Although he could have used their shared bed, the possibility of her inviting others there deterred him. Woken by a knock, wearing only boxers and a t-shirt, he cautiously approached the door. If he had looked through the spy hole, he wouldn't have opened it. There stood Candace, embodying extravagance, a breathtakingly attractive woman with a desirable cheerleader physique. Like Jackson, she was a business owner, operating a chain of fitness centers, guiding clients struggling with weight issues. Yet Jackson saw her as a seductive but ultimately damaging force, visually appealing but internally flawed. It was past 1 a.m., and there she stood in her sleek black dress. Jackson frowned. "What do you want?" Her charming smile, usually compelling, appeared. "I thought you'd like some company. Here to provide it," she offered. She gently ran her fingers over his face, down his chest, promising a memorable night. "Not happening," Jackson retorted, moving her hand aside. "Go away. It's not going to occur." Her demeanor turned playful. "Oh, come on, you're single now. It could be enjoyable," she persisted. Jackson pushed her aside, closing the door on Candace. Smiling to herself, she walked back to her car, relishing the pursuit of a man playing hard to catch. That Sunday, Jackson did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He got ready for church. Raised in the Baptist faith, he was reluctant to sit through a sermon on condemnation and redemption, choosing a local non-denominational church instead. He arrived just before the service began, choosing a seat a few rows back in the middle to minimize disruption to others. The sermon, about allowing God to lead you to better yourself and help others, struck a chord with him. Despite his achievements, he often felt an absence of motivation to assist others. Contemplating mentorship, he thought about setting an example. This moment of introspection was brief, as he came home to Diana angrily confronting him about her locked-out situation. In response to her accusations and demands, he calmly suggested that maybe she should seek comfort within a church community, subtly implying that she look for companionship there. Following him inside after he unlocked the entrance, she immediately voiced her wish to go back to her own place, citing her inability to cohabit with Steph due to her unproductive lifestyle. "No, staying here isn't an option. I freed you from the commitment you were likely to violate, assuming you haven't already. By the way, which was the object you felt compelled to acquire?" "I don't." Struggled to finish her sentence, wanting to express her aversion, yet Jackson cut in, "Don't lie. You've been in my life too long for that, and it's clear you've had this since you left. There's no turning back." At this point, "You know how I feel about it." Dee's thoughts drifted to last year when she had the desire to go to a friend's bachelorette party. He bluntly warned that attending would inevitably lead to betrayal in their relationship, be it the initial or a subsequent occasion, convinced she would give in. Eventually, she was hesitant to acknowledge his point, as he lambasted married women acting as singles, suggesting such behavior invites trouble, and could negatively affect his business if clients were to learn of her indiscretions and decide to look elsewhere. Dee reached out for a hug, but he pushed her away, announcing, "Tomorrow, Tracy, my new aide, will put together a list of budget-friendly living spaces. It will be sent to your office email. Following that, you can move your bedroom set and other belongings." In tears, she contested her financial incapability to live independently on her salary, pleading for his support. Jackson stood his ground, pointing out that her employment was unnecessary due to his ample income, but her choice to work led to the wasteful expenditure of her earnings. With the divorce, budgeting becomes essential. Recall, numerous families make do with less than your salary. He guided her to the vehicle, noting that the divorce documents would be delivered to her at work on their anniversary, unless she opted for a private handling at the attorney's office on Tuesday. Dee, holding out hope for mending their relationship, recognized that the Jackson who once loved her significantly differed from the Jackson now withdrawing his love. At Cheryl's residence on Wednesday, the setting was rife with alcohol as Dee, Cheryl, Steph, and others indulged heavily, lacking food. The arrival of Candace with additional drinks escalated the scenario, and as restraint diminished, she audaciously declared her scheme to captivate Jackson. The ensemble, merry and inebriated, shrugged off her plan. Cheryl humorously arranged their efforts, with Candace assuredly ruling out any rivalry from mummy bodies. Candace's admission of her unsuccessful flirtation prompted Dee to ponder on her marriage to Jackson for a life of ease without work, despite recognizing her own unfaithfulness. This reflection brought Diana to an awakening about her deeds. When Jackson greeted Beeks and her offspring, who came bearing a casserole in solidarity, they enjoyed a meal on the patio. After eating, Beeks and Jackson conversed about his sentiments regarding the recent tumults, while her children played basketball. Appreciating Beeks's solidarity during the day's startling developments, their exchange of a brief but impactful kiss signified a tender closure to a day filled with emotion. Jackson was roused between 1:30 and 2 a.m. by a call from Diana, who oscillated between weeping and reproaching him. "How could you do this to me? Isn't your love for me sufficient?" For him, it signified Diana's lack of sufficient love, her failure to steer clear of nightclubs, and her erratic behavior there. After disconnecting, the phone would ring again, following the third tone. He terminated the conversation, intending to reach out once she was sober. Jackson waited until 11 to make the call. She didn't express remorse for the prior night's calls. He inquired why she hadn't followed up with Tracy regarding the apartment located for her. She overlooked the inquiry, insisting on her wish to come back. "No, the knowledge of you spending the night with others signifies the end of our marriage. You didn't even delay your pursuits." "I trust it paid off. Barely a week passed, and you found yourself amidst other suitors at the door's sound. He noticed Beeks arriving with a grocery sack. He signaled, "Hold on, let me wrap up this conversation with a breath." He resumed, "Diana, you chose the company of others, and I'm now ensuring your future as an independent, divorced woman, which clearly suits your wishes. Therefore, sign the documentation. Should Tracy not see you by tomorrow, I will personally see to the apartment matter. The initial 2 months of rent will be on me. That's the extent of it." Beeks has unexpectedly brought over lunch. The conversation was concluded. By the evening at 6, Stephanie had reached her limit with Diana's grievances. "Honestly, you have to move past this. Beeks isn't stealing your partner. It might be tough to accept, but it was you who pursued that man and succeeded." What was Jackson left with? He acknowledged his inability to fulfill what his spouse of 2 decades desired. "Regrettably, sister, such behavior is unforgivable. The Jackson you recall isn't returning." Diana refused acceptance, "Yet you did nothing to prevent me." Stephanie looked at her, confused. "And why would I interfere? Pursuing what you desire has always been your trait. I admit my own imperfections. You've made your mistake, yet you hope for Jackson to pretend as if it never occurred. Be grateful he doesn't know the half of it. Get dressed elegantly, and let's lift your spirits." 2 weeks on, Diana encountered numerous but unsatisfying new relationships. On a Monday night post-work, Bert and Cheryl joined Diana at her new apartment, which Jackson had arranged. He had moved their primary bedroom furniture and her favorite items from their home. The entire place was freshly painted and cleaned, even the refrigerator was filled. Bert, supportive as ever, brought her tire over as Cheryl had suggested. He managed the clothes, unpacking and organizing them. After leaving briefly, he returned with dinner. They stayed overnight to help Diana not feel alone on her first night in the new setting. Cheryl knew Diana was delaying the divorce in the hopes her husband would yearn for her return, reviving her ideal lifestyle. Cheryl had kept to herself about knowing. Beeks and Jackson had lunched together frequently. The longer this continues, the more Diana deteriorates. Cheryl proposed a housewarming bachelorette gathering at Diana's new home. Cheryl got a call from Beeks on Friday. "Hey there, this Friday we're meeting up at Diana's place. Do come. It's been ages since our last gathering." Cheryl hesitated. Lately, the children's father hasn't been around to pick them up. He's been away on business, making it hard for me to step out. It was a minor deception. She had been to Jackson's, but never for more than an hour. It was a test. I was sure he'd maintain boundaries and not stay over. I'll see if I can find someone to look after them on Friday. They are teenagers, after all. Maybe they can manage on their own for a while. It won't be for too long, but sooner or later, I'll have to retrieve my security deposit. They tend to quarrel and could damage the place. Jackson looked forward to luncheons with friends. From their long-standing friendship, she understood he rarely took breaks from his office for lunch. Preferring meals prepared at home could be his secret to success. It's often the little details. Her workplace was merely 2 blocks from Jackson's office. Their meetings weren't daily, but he cherished her company. Among his circle, she stood out as the sole friend he genuinely appreciated. The rest he barely endured for the sake of peace. During one Thursday lunch, she inquired if he could watch her children so she could go to a housewarming party. He agreed with enthusiasm. Jackson loved her 3 sons, aged 13, 15, and 17, who regarded him as the cool uncle. An uncle who would play basketball with them in the yard during visits. He reminisced about basketball games with his own son. These boys somewhat filled that void. She didn't have to bring the kids over, as Jackson would pick them up for baseball and kart racing activities. She paused, then rapped lightly on the door. Upon hearing a welcoming come in, she cautiously opened the door to find Cheryl and Steph, each holding a drink. Yet before she could step inside, Candace briskly moved ahead into the room. "Hey," Candace said sharply, her tension evident. Following the sound of a toilet flushing, Dee made her entrance, a noticeable strain existing between her and Beeks, quiet at the moment, but seemingly temporary. As the evening progressed with wine and whiskey, the atmosphere relaxed, and Cheryl proposed they assist Dee in mending her relationship with Jack. This idea distressed Beeks. Her affections were for Jackson, not Jack. A slightly inebriated Candace argued that Dee would not win him back without being physically close to him, boasting about the physical satisfaction she experienced, which was just right, her perfect size for pleasure. Beeks disputed Candace's assertion, to which Candace insinuated Beeks wanted Jaxie as a father figure for her children. Beeks realized the superficial nature of her friends. Her ex had often pointed it out. Candace's remarks about Jackson were too much. Before Beeks could respond, Dee intervened, asserting her claim on Jackson and accusing Beeks of overstepping. Dee then nudged Beeks toward the door, where Beeks expressed her true feelings. She acknowledged Dee's history but maintained that Jackson was entitled to better, pointing out the faults of the others: Steph's lack of discretion, Cheryl's unfaithfulness, and Candace's superficiality. Beeks stated she wasn't aggressively pursuing Jackson but rather giving him space, yet now felt the need to justify her stance. She alerted Dee to her resolve, suggesting her presence would make Jackson uninterested in others. Following this, Beeks returned to her apartment for some solitude, reflecting. The children were with Jackson in need of comfort. She rang him. He invited her to join them for a baseball game, humorously lamenting the aches from go-kart racing. She found Jackson and her sons in the baseball field's booth. She took a seat behind the fence. Her elder sons managed without his guidance, but the youngest welcomed it. She watched with a smile as he spent time with them. Jackson's smile widened when he spotted her watching. He silently signaled for her to come inside, offering a baseball helmet. She refused with a head shake, yet the kids insisted, leading her to stand with a bat, trying to hit the ball for several innings, missing each time. Jackson stepped behind her, taking the bat from her shoulder, advising her to bend lower, and helped her swing at the next pitch. She was surprised when she made contact with the ball. It wasn't a perfect hit, but it wasn't a miss either. Feeling Jackson's proximity, guiding her posture and swing, filled her with security. Her pulse raced. She never hit the ball by herself, but it was the most fun she had in years, laughing until she cried. She would treasure this evening forever as the moment she realized her love for Jackson. Jackson followed her car back to her apartment with a grin. She mentioned that it wasn't necessary for Jackson to accompany them home, but he just smiled. He helped her and the boys with their stuff into the apartment, then asked if she would like to have breakfast with him the next morning, to which she agreed. On his way back, he got a message from Bert about the girls leaving E's place for the club. They got stopped on the road and ended up in a detox center to sober up. He told Bert the decision was his, but decided to let them learn their lesson, thinking about the potential increase in insurance premiums from drunk driving. He wondered if Diana had been behind the wheel. Over breakfast, Jackson and she deepened their connection. She shared about the previous night at Dee's and her bold stance there. He laughed at her confrontational manner and pondered whether her early leave was for him, acknowledging his selfish wish but realizing everyone has such desires. He wanted to be honest with her, sharing that holding her in the batting cage felt natural and believing she felt the same. She concurred, revealing her deep-seated love for him. She admitted she had fallen for him long before and was willing to wait as long as it took. She produced an envelope from her purse, indicating her health condition and over a year of celibacy as proof of her earnestness. Jackson valued her openness. She reflected on her past mistakes, pondering the days leading to her divorce and her clear remorse. Despite recognizing her essential decency, he questioned her continuous dating post-divorce, leading to their eventual split. She described the complicated, yearning for affection post-divorce, even when aware that the other isn't a perfect match but merely a temporary comfort. He asked about her tolerance of Diana's reckless behavior. She confessed her attempts to discourage Diana, but acknowledged her friend's stubbornness. Despite her efforts to prevent Diana's errors, he humorously noted her failure in this protective role as their sincere conversation continued. He honestly expressed his feelings to her. "I feel a bond between us, and that moment on the balcony, when I shared that I might think about dating you, I meant every word. You've consistently been a standout in her circle, and I cherish our conversations. I look forward to our meetings and calls. You correct me when I say something silly, and you add joy to my life. Moreover, you're an exceptional mother." Beeks looked worried as she responded. "Speaking of being open, I reciprocate your sentiments. However, consider my situation. I'm not like others. I don't frequent the gym, and I'm critiqued for my motherly shape. I don't have the means for luxury. Struggling to support 3 teenage boys on my salary is tough, and the child support hardly suffices for their food." He tenderly held her hands. "You are beautiful. I find you appealing and admire your figure," he stated, a playful smile on his face. "I look forward to appreciating your figure." The waiter approached with their check, offering a knowing smile at his words. As they got up to leave, he grabbed the check off the table, looked at her, and smiled. "Any plans for the rest of the day?" Beeks leaned into him and, tiptoeing, kissed him on the mouth. "Actually, there's something I haven't done in a long while. It's been over a year." Jackson, in his underwear, looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. He was about to have a sexual encounter for the first time in 25 years with someone other than his soon-to-be former wife. Learning about Dee's betrayal had made him feel exposed. Beek appeared to him as a desirable woman. His dad would have noted her well-rounded figure. He took a deep breath and opened the door, expecting her to be sitting on the bed, waiting for him. To his surprise, he saw her covered up to her chin under the blankets. Jackson felt slightly disappointed. He had anticipated a different scenario and shared his feelings as he pulled back the blankets to join Beak in bed. "You can flip me over another time when I'm more comfortable. This is new to me and I don't want you to harshly judge my body." Jackson laid beside her, their skin touching. The heat from her ample chest was exciting against him. "Your body could never let me down. Whatever the ex does, she does for herself, not for me. I've always been drawn to women who are fuller-figured." He soothed her, his right hand on her left thigh, stroking her leg up to her lower chest, then back down to her hip, caressing her rounded lower body. He leaned in to kiss her for the first time. As their lips met, they gently explored each other, their passion building, their kisses becoming more intense, as if trying to devour each other. She rolled onto her back, and he placed his right leg over her, pulling her in as their kissing deepened. His hand roamed over her soft belly, along her ribs to her ample chest. Her hand reached for his waist, slipping into his underwear to find what she was looking for. Exhausted, she rested on his chest, panting. It had been too long since she had felt anything like this, in fact, never quite like this. Her ex and the men she had dated after the divorce hadn't prioritized her pleasure. Those men, her ex included, pursued their own gratification, which never satisfied her. Jackson moved her to lie on top of him, holding her tightly. This moment would be cherished forever, making him feel rejuvenated. He might not fully grasp the effect of Dee's betrayal, but he knew it had deeply impacted him. He continued to hold her as they drifted off to sleep together. Jackson was the first to wake up. He looked at Rebecca tenderly, thinking of her as an acquaintance of Diane's. Diane was full of life, while Rebecca was the mature adult he thought he might love. He valued the time spent with her and her kids. He hadn't realized how much he missed being a fatherly figure. He gently kissed her, waking her up. "Rebecca," he said for the first time, "I'm not sure about our future, but I want us to be exclusive. I can't assume you feel the same, but it would make me happy if you did." She kissed him back. "I want nothing more." Rebecca smiled until she noticed the alarm clock. "Oh no, it's been over an hour. The kids will start to worry." Getting out of bed, Jackson observed her figure for the first time and was impressed. She might have thought herself to be overweight, but through his perspective she was perfect. "Can I use your restroom?" "Of course," he replied, contemplating the idea of joining her, but he understood that her priority as a mother was more important at the moment. He didn't interfere with her getting ready but accompanied her to the car, and they exchanged a kiss. "I want you to come back with the children in a little while. I want to make sure they are comfortable with me dating their mom," he suggested. She smiled, moved by his consideration. Upon Rebecca's arrival with her boys, they found Jackson making hamburgers with potato salad, beans, and various toppings prepared on the table. After eating, Jackson pulled the boys to one side while she cleaned up. They sat near a fire pit. "Guys, there's something I want to talk about. I'm very fond of your mum and I'm interested in dating her, but only if you're okay with it. It's important to me that you are supportive, because I care about you too. Can I date your mum?" The boys looked at each other, facing a question they hadn't before. Quietly consulting each other, the younger ones looked to their older brother, who gave a nod. The oldest, taking charge, said, "Yes, sir, we would be okay with that." Jackson stood up, followed by the boys, and they shared a group hug. Jackson was deeply moved when the youngest asked if he would be their new dad. "If that's what you want, it would be my great honor." Seeing this unfold, Rebecca was emotionally overwhelmed. Her children, just as much as she did, needed a male figure in their life, someone to look up to. She wiped away tears with a tissue, observing as the younger son grabbed a basketball and hurried off to play a game of doubles with Jackson and his brothers. While tidying up, Rebecca heard the doorbell. "Jackson, someone's at the door," she yelled. Absorbed in the game, he didn't notice. She wiped her hands on a towel, walked through the sliding doors, and made her way to the front door. The doorbell echoed again, and as she opened it, Rebecca stepped back when Dee forcefully entered. "Why are you here in my house?" Dee demanded. Standing firm, Rebecca answered, "This is no longer your house. It belongs to Jackson now. You live in an apartment on Richard Street. Remember how you kicked me out last night?" As Dee pushed past Rebecca, her gaze swept the house looking for Jack. "Where is my husband?" "I was locked up all night. He was supposed to bail me out." Rebecca quickly approached Dee, confronting her directly. "Why do you think he had to get you out of jail?" "He's my husband. It's his obligation," she argued. "Actually, it's not his job to rescue you from jail. It's your responsibility not to get arrested for being drunk in public. Manage your life." Rebecca was frustrated with her old friend. Dee stormed off through the house while Rebecca stayed back. "I get why you're here, but it's pointless. You left him, and I'm here trying to help him avoid the same downfall my previous partner faced," she declared, placing her hands on her hips and looking straight into Dee's eyes. "You're in the exact spot I was 3 years back. You made mistakes and lost your husband by doing things any married woman should. And now you'll face the consequences. Loneliness is a harsh punishment. Every night I return to a quiet, empty apartment, missing the gentle, comforting presence of a loving husband and kids. Luckily, I have children, but your kid is grown and your husband is moving on. It's going to be hard for you being 45 and alone on weekdays, waiting for weekends in hopes of finding anyone to fill the void. I didn't plan this, but I made love to Jackson today," she admitted, lifting her hand. "We both realized something. We both agree he's an incredible lover, so caring, so passionate," she added, smiling privately. "This is incredibly uncommon," Dee sobbed. "I've acted so unwisely. Indeed, you are right. He's wonderful and the finest companion I've ever been with. I failed to see this, assuming I could engage in an affair without his knowledge, chasing after a more exhilarating experience. That rare, deep bond." She paused. "I've already found it," Dee murmured quietly. BX moved towards the door leading to the balcony. "Jackson's outside with the children. Shall I invite him inside?" she suggested. Dee remained beside her companion, watching the basketball sail through the hoop with Jackson's shot. "He's a remarkable dad. I had lost sight of how much joy it brought me to see him play basketball," she confessed to her companion. "Do you love him?" "Absolutely," BX asserted. "I want you to know today marks our first meeting. I'm not sure if his affection for me equals mine, but should he choose me, I'm committed to spending my life ensuring his happiness. We're both nearing menopause, aware it will bring changes, yet Jackson seems like someone who will understand and adjust on our behalf." Diana wept. "My visit today was to seduce him once more, to be close to him one last time, even if it leads to heartbreak. Should he become close with you, it shows he's letting go. I grasp his approach to handling everything. He wouldn't engage in such behaviors if I had been presented with the chance." Dee turned around, heading back to the doorway. She stopped at the doorway, turning around to instruct that he be told of her plans to engage a lawyer and complete the paperwork. Rebecca relayed to Jackson the purpose of Dee's visit, including the plan for their lawyers to communicate. He gathered her and the kids, leading them to their home. He gently kissed her and locked the car door. 7 months later, Dee asked for a short meeting with Jackson and his lawyer before their court date. Jackson knew Diane wanted to settle matters. She asked for forgiveness for her arrogance and quick temper, admitting her neglect of his admirable traits and regretting initiating relationships with those he disapproved of, a warning she had ignored. "Diane, I tried to explain that married women shouldn't behave as though they were single. It was clear to me that your loyalty was doubtful, as your frequent visits to bachelorette parties went unnoticed by you but not by others. Eventually, I received photos and messages from those who saw you in clubs and restaurants, which I chose to ignore for love's sake. Yet there's a moment when a boundary must be set. Coming home that Saturday to find you talking about chasing another man was the last straw for me. If your heart is set on someone else, I will make way." He rose, offering her his best for the future. "Diana, you'll always be an important part of my life. We have a son together, and events like birthdays and holidays will mean we need to communicate. I will be polite and friendly, always ready to help in a crisis. But our paths in marriage are now separate. My dedication has been to a single woman, a standard that hasn't wavered. With that, he departed, leaving Diana amidst her grief. As for the narrative or the challenge facing the current character, I choose not to offer an opinion. instead inviting readers to express their thoughts in the comments section below. Look forward to our forthcoming conversation.